are here with the boys from JUCO Advocate, Mr. Brandon Goble and Mr. Todd Zollinger. Super pumped to have you guys here. If you haven't heard of JUCO Advocate, let me tell you right now, they are a must-follow account for anybody in the world of college basketball, especially on the coaching and media side. Seems like these guys have made quite a name for themselves. And more importantly, they seem like really good people who do really good work. So excited to hear more about them and their story today. If we could do just quick round the horn intros, I think that would be awesome. So let's go to Brandon first.
Yeah, I'm Brandon Goble. I'm the CEO of JUCO Advocate, co-CEO of JUCO Advocate and Verbal Commits. We own that brand as well. And Nathan LeClaire and I manage those.
I'm Todd Zollinger. I do scouting and operations with Brandon at JUCO Advocate, and I also coach college basketball. Currently at Scottsdale Community College, but our season just got canceled, so you could call me a free agent, but it is what it is.
Hey, I'm a high school freshman boys coach, and our season is quote unquote postponed at the moment. So I share your condolences. I think we're gonna get the cancellation sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
Tough times.
It's rough.
Well, thank you guys both for being here. So let's start with just a little backstory on JUCO Advocate. How did you guys sort of get this idea for the service you provide, and how did it come to fruition?
Yeah, it was kind of like, it wasn't anything that was ever really planned by any means. I got into basketball doing data and analytics for a Division I program, just kind of helping out on the side with a lot of things. And basketball was definitely not something that I ever thought was going to be my future. I was in the corporate world, doing that whole climb the ladder thing. And, we started the company about 4.5 years ago now. And, but before that, I met a guy, just in an open gym. I would usually go and kind of watch some of the NBA guys that would come back to the school that I was at, and they, run open gym in the summer. And so I was hanging out there, and one of the former players introduced me to a guy that he had met that had just gotten out of the military. He'd been in the Air Force for 6 years, named Solomon Heine, and he wanted to walk on to the school. And head coach was not about looking at walk-ons. And so he just said, hey, I want to play college basketball. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know anything about eligibility. I don't whatever. And I said, cool, neither do I. But let me see what I can find. And because I didn't know anybody in basketball. Like, I literally got into it by doing math and, was writing logarithms and things like that. And somebody that was on the staff, saw me tweeting about it from an old personal account. And so, one of the guys that helped me get into that was actually currently at Midland Junior College at the time. And so I got a hold of Solomon. I said, hey, I'll work you out. We'll film it. See what happens. You're 6'6", 6'7", like, fortunately you're not 5'10". And nothing against 5'10" guys, but when you're like literally making it up as you go, trust me, like height matters. So, we filmed him, worked him out. And I sent it down to Sam Winooski down at Midland, who was an assistant down there at the time. And he was like, hey, we'll let him walk on here and see what happens. And that was a trying year for sure. Like, it actually prepared me, I think, better than anything else could have for what I do now, because Solomon was, he was a combat veteran. He's hard-headed. He, is a very aggressive person on a court, in practice, all that kind of stuff. Like, he really wasn't a JUCO prepared guy, because he didn't know what he was getting into. I didn't know what he was getting into. Like, I didn't know anything about junior college basketball at the time. And I remember, that first week he calls me, he's like, what in the hell is going on? Like, where am I? What is happening? Like, this is crazy. He's like, I want to quit. I want to leave. Like, this is stupid. And I'm like, bro, I don't know what to tell you. Like, figure it out, man. And he did. And it was a crazy year. There was a lot of phone calls that year. There was a lot of me getting up from dinner being like, I got to take this. Like, Solomon's about to lose his mind. And so when it came time for recruitment stuff, again, no idea what I was doing, right? Didn't know anybody. And so I said, okay, well, let's gather up your film and, we'll get your games and I'll figure out how to cut up film. I don't know how to do that. So we're going to do that. And, start making highlights. And I even took stuff from like when he was in the military, he would set up his phone and just during workouts, like shooting jump shots and stuff like that. And I would cut that in there and be like, no, see, like he can really shoot it and whatever. And so from my personal account, I started tweeting at every coach in Division I basketball. I went through, and actually at the time I didn't know Nathan. I didn't know verbal commits. I didn't know anything, which is funny now that like, we're the same company. But I went through the list of who he followed so that I knew where all of the Division I coach Twitter handles were. So I'm just bam, 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 follow all these guys. And I start tweeting at them. And on my personal account, I didn't have anybody that was really following me. So I knew if I tweeted at the coach and I looked at the analytics to see if somebody clicked on the link, it probably was the guy I tweeted at, because nobody following me was going to see it or look at it. It wasn't like anybody was liking it or retweeting it or anything. So I would look and see like, okay, I would tweet at Jeff Alexander at Evansville. And then it would show that he looked at it. And then sure enough, either I'd get a DM from coach saying, hey, can you tell me more about this kid? Or I would then reply to the tweet with another clip, like another video. And then if that one got it, then that, they would watch that one as well. Then usually I get this DM. And so by the time he was done, he ended up with 20, 25, something like that, D1 offers. And yeah, just kind of like once we got him all set, I said, I bet there's a bunch of other kids that, need help. Solomon was just like such a cool story. Like I thought it was so interesting and amazing that junior college could provide an opportunity to somebody that, he was 24 years old when he went to college for the first time, but your clock stops when you join the military. So he'd gone straight from high school into the Air Force. So from clock perspective, it was like he was 18.
Yeah.
And so it was crazy. Like, you got this 24-year-old dude and he wants to punch a hole through some of these 18-year-old kids' faces when they're doing dumb stuff. And so once we got him taken care of, then I had met Daniel Poneman, who's now an NBA agent. He's the head of Beyond Athlete Management, which is his own amazing, ridiculous, crazy story where he's just like, I'm going to go do cool stuff and I'm going to be really good at it and it's going to be successful. And he just goes and does these amazing things. And so I met him, I DM'd him and I was like, hey, I got this kid and, can you help me get his name out there? And Nils Deckow, same thing. Like he runs Texas Top 100 and had reached out to him. And so all these guys I kind of got together. And then a buddy of mine was a software engineer. I said, hey, let's make this thing. Let's make this JUCO Advocate thing. Like, I don't know what it is. I don't know what we're going to do with it. I started out like with an Excel spreadsheet and I would tweet out and say, hey, if anybody needs help finding a school, like send me your film. And it started with 10 names and then it was 50 names and then it was 100 names and it was just boom, 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 boom. And then people would say, hey, can you send me the spreadsheet? Or, you got any guards that, look like this? And I had spent so much time watching basketball through the analytics and the writing the scout side of it. I probably watched 3-4 games a day, every day. And so I had this, years of stuff, like knowing what a basketball player looked like what's a Division I player like? What do you have to be able to do? What's the level being? I've watched more basketball than I'll challenge anybody to how much basketball. Right. And so that was my in with this thing was like, hey, I kind of know what I'm talking about. And it started working and, kids got to schools and they were successful at those schools. And cause it was a lot about like, where's the right fit? Like, where can you play? Where can you fit in? It didn't matter if it was Division I on down to NAIA. And, like Tim Graham was one of the first kids we ever helped. He's a pro over in Europe now. And it was just like these really cool stories started to develop, like with these kids' backgrounds, it was whether they were international or whether they were, domestic and just had something unique to them, something different. And so it kind of went from a spreadsheet to a website to, a pretty big social media presence to, meeting Nathan and he and I kind of being kindred spirits in like what we want to accomplish in this, and deciding to join our companies together. And now, like, you know, we have some cool stuff that we've not announced to anybody or shared with anybody except Todd over there smiling. And so we got some really, really cool stuff coming down the pike that I think is, you know, I kind of joke about the hashtag team takeover thing, but like, that's kind of the goal here. So.
If you want to break it here, you can. We're not holding you back at all. So if you want to go ahead and break that.
Man, I wish Todd, Nathan would literally lose his flipping mind if I did it right now. But yeah, we got some really, really dope stuff coming out that I'm super excited about. And I don't know. I think we're on the right track to change a lot of things. So
I love it. So I think my major takeaway from that backstory is that you are a hustler. Like, first of all, I assume everyone on this call obviously loves college basketball. I think anyone listening to this loves college basketball. But man, like the amount of work and just effort and grind that goes into it to anyone, whether you're on the coaching side, the playing side, like obviously there's different grinds involved in this sport. But I mean, like you said, to go from one player to a spreadsheet to now building out the infrastructure you guys have, that's just insane. So I wanted to ask you more details on like, how does the infrastructure work today? So does a player come to you guys first and then you sort of, you know, check some boxes and see what you can do, or are you outbound reaching out to kids?
It's a little bit of everything, honestly. Like the actual JUCO Advocate scouting side of it is not as structured as we had originally intended. So one of the first things we ever did once we got past the spreadsheet was Matt Clark, who's our software engineer. He's brilliant and he's really good with databasing software. And so we thought, okay, let's make this website where kids can log in and put in all their stuff, put in their film, you know, put in all their information, whatever. And then coaches can log in, like they would have their own personal, validated, verified, you know, coach account. And then they can search this thing, right? And this big database, and they can sort by, I want 6.5 to 6.10 with a 3.2 plus GPA and blah, 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 all this stuff. And it was cool. And we learned really quickly, crap in, crap out, where like kids don't, like, they're not good at this. they're like, you know, making stuff up, or, you know, the 5'6" kid is like, yeah, I'm 6 foot. And it's like, that's not true. And, you know, I would get these messages. We had this thing, like it was mobile native too. So like you could do it on your phone, but because of the database and stuff, you had to turn your phone sideways for it to work correctly. So you would log in and it would say, rotate your device if you held it up straight. So you rotate your device, it would recognize that you've rotated it, and boom, it'd pop up the spreadsheet. So it was great technology. And I would literally get these messages from these kids saying, I don't know what's wrong with your database. All it says is rotate your device. And I'm like, did you rotate your device? And they're like, oh, it works now. Cool, thanks. I'm like, like it literally says it on the screen is rotate your device. Like, just do it, you know, just turn your phone sideways. And they're like, oh, it's cool. So we kind of figured out real quick that unfortunately, like that style of doing things like just doesn't, it's not very effective. Like there's a lot of kids that got signed off that database. I still get coaches today that are like, yeah, we got this guy, we got that. And there's a place for that somewhere, but it's probably not with like what we're really trying to do. So, it's a lot more targeted now, a lot more hands-on. We utilize, I guess, kind of the resources around us as much as possible, to where, you know, yeah, there's kids that hit me up every day, but I can't get to all of them. Yeah, I literally get 300 DMs a day. And so I'm just kind of going through and seeing what I can see sometimes. But we've met a lot of great people and you know, guys like Todd that come in and, you know, help with a lot of those things. And, you know, there's people that I go out and actively see and pursue, you know, scouting, whether it's high school or scouting in junior college, scouting a ton internationally now, you know, all the FIBA stuff, you know, we bring a lot of kids over from just connecting with them online after I've seen them in FIBA competition and things like that, and helping them get to school, and doing everything that way. But definitely like the main, I guess, thing that we will never compromise in all of this is none of the kids ever pay for anything. Like there's no charge when you play in one of our events, whether it's team or the JA event. Like we run everything at no cost to kids ever. And so that's something that we're really working on expanding now too, with our partnership with the Undiscovered Showcase series that Dan is a part of, and working with NBA players to run nonprofit camps domestically as well as internationally, and helping as many kids get to school as possible without them paying a dime. Like you shouldn't have to have $250 to play in an exposure event to get a college scholarship is kind of our thing. And so that's something that we've focused on for sure. We will not compromise that ever. And so we find different creative ways to make money and work with different partners and stuff. And so that's what I'm really excited about this next year, not only on the technology side of things that we have cooking, but in 21 now, like really connecting with all of these relationships that we've built over this COVID time, right? Like I'm sitting here doing podcasts and doing Zoom calls and things like that. So, it's like, whether it's a relationship now with Kendrick Perkins or a relationship with Mo Wagner, Juan Toscano Anderson, different guys that we've talked to about this, like, hey, this podcast is great. We're doing this thing. I've enjoyed our conversation, but let me tell you about this other thing that we're doing. And they're like, hey, that's dope. Like, I want to be a part of that. And kind of really expanding that in 21 once we kind of get unscrewed by COVID.
Absolutely. That's awesome. You mentioned events. So COVID's obviously put a halt to a lot of the stuff. What does a normal year pre-COVID look like with events? Are you hosting your own tournaments? Are you hosting like spotlight showcase stuff for kids?
So what we've done in the past and hopefully, 21 is going to be interesting because of obviously we just don't know where like the first 4 or 5 months are going to leave us, but definitely in 22, probably double what we've done in the past. So in 2019, I guess, we ran the Evan Turner Showcase up in Chicago, which he sponsored for years with Dan, and then we came in and became a part of that, where we would help anywhere from 250 to 300 inner city Chicago kids play in an event for free. Usually 60 to 80 scholarships would come out of that because we'd get about 150 coaches there that we get to come to that event. So that was usually in April. And then we started an event called JA, which it was JA. What was it, Todd? JA 32, but it actually had 36.
I think this last year. So the first year you did it, 2018, was 32, but it was actually 36. And then we did 45 last year, but it was actually 48.
Yeah, hey, because Brandon, you're an analytics guy, man.
Right. I'm literally sitting there trying to figure out rosters, and like, because what it is it's an event where it's kind of like elite junior college kids, like the top guys, and they play on a regular team with real coaches, and I hire Division I refs, and we do custom uniforms, and we film everything. We make it a big deal. We do photo shoots. We do, as much as, we cater the thing. Like we make it as cool as possible for these kids. And as I was like, yeah, JA32, and I made the graphic and I sent it out there, and I spent months doing this thing. I did the invitations. I was like, wait, we need 36 players for this thing. And so there was 36. So then the next year I was like, all right, I want to expand this a little bit. Like I never want to get above like 50. Like I want this to be a pretty exclusive thing, but because we get 300 Division I coaches sitting there on one court. This isn't a multi-court thing. This is full games. This is, focused, right? So I wanted to keep it relatively small, and I was like, all right, 45. We're going to do 5 teams of 9. How in the hell am I going to get 5 teams to play an equal number of games in this thing? I was like, Todd, we got to do 48, man. Yeah. So 2 years running, I got the math wrong at the very beginning of the
I think we just need to keep it at 45 at this point, and just
Just
however
have
many we
48
have is
total.
however it's just
Right.
JA 45 is just a good, well-rounded number.
Yeah, it
Just
sounds
good.
cool. It's got a nice ring to it, J45. So
the 45 definitely adds a little something to it. I mean, it's really amazing, like what you guys have done, and like just seeing where it started. Something like social media and Twitter is crazy. Todd,
it's bonkers what social media can do, right? Like
it's actually really crazy. It's beautiful. It's sometimes ugly, but most of the time it's beautiful. Todd, I'm interested to know, because I have a lot of friends, former teammates of mine. I played at the Division III college basketball level who are in the coaching world now, and it seems like I just kind of want to know the balance between you being a coach at the JUCO level, but also doing the scouting for JA. It just seems like a whole lot. I mean, I know a lot goes into scouting and a lot goes into coaching, so I feel like combining those two, are you staying sane over there, and how do you do it?
Yeah, man. I mean, well, like I said, our season's canceled this year, unfortunately, and that's a whole separate story that, yeah, we could talk about that another time. It would be a whole nother podcast to talk about small college basketball and COVID. But I mean, to my wife's chagrin, I spend a lot of time watching basketball. As Brandon said before, I watch a lot of junior college basketball specifically. My start in basketball was a little unique, and it started kind of at the JUCO level, pseudo JUCO. But once I started, I got obsessed, and that's how I came in touch with Brandon, was actually on Twitter. And we just got to talking, and then a year later, probably, he was inviting me out to go help with JA 45.
I think originally you guys were going to come down with Rexburg, because we do a team event in the fall too. We get about 60 something teams that play in the thing, and Todd's team was going to come down.
It just we didn't have any budget, so
it's free. We don't charge it. Teams nothing. I was like, man, we don't charge. And he's like, yeah, no, that's not really the issue. It's the you're in a different state.
Yeah. It was we were gonna take place in the Rocky Mountain JUCO Jamboree, but it was a little too we couldn't pay for our hotels. That was the biggest thing. We could have probably paid to get there. We couldn't have paid for anywhere to stay. But that's how we initially came in touch. He was talking about it because I ran this kind of I call it a club JUCO team, because really it was we played a full JUCO schedule of 12 games in non-conference time for junior colleges. We would play junior colleges. The school was in Idaho. It didn't have any collegiate athletics, so no intercollegiate athletics at BYU Idaho. It was formerly a junior college called Ricks College, and shout out to Steve Craig, who started this club basketball team that would go out and play these junior colleges all over the region. And I hopped on board with that and was an assistant, and then when I was a head coach, and that's when I came in touch with Brandon, and we couldn't afford to go. And then randomly I'm in Houston visiting my in-laws, and I tweet out, I'm like, man, I would love to go to a Houston practice. And then Brandon hits up my DMs. He's like, so I just talked to Kellen Sampson, the associate head coach at Houston. Are you still in town? I was like, yeah. He's like, do you want to go to a practice tomorrow? And I said, yeah. And then I went, got to watch them practice. And by the way, they're number 5 in the nation now. And I could have told you that was coming 2 years ago when I went to that practice. But yeah, that was a great experience. And then Brandon and I just kept working together, and he helped me solidify the job at Scottsdale. And even though it was a volunteer position last year, and that was my first season at Scottsdale. And then it was, like I said, a volunteer position while I was finishing up my degree with a wife and a kid, and working with Brandon. So if you're asking me how I balance my time, it's just I don't have time.
I gotta say, I've been married for a little over a year. I coach high school freshman boys hoops, and I host a podcast, and I feel like it's hard for me to balance time. I've got it easy compared to the guys on this call.
I mean, it's
Also,
definitely like something you got to, you know, doing what you love, and you don't feel like you're working. Because I was in the corporate world for 15 years. I literally finally hung up the corporate job to do this full time in November of 19. And so, great timing, right? Like, oh, you know what? That steady paycheck, nah, we don't need that anymore. We're gonna go see the world in 2020. But you know, you're doing what you love. So like, I was doing this at the same time as doing a 9 to 5, and you know, fortunately, I worked from home, so I don't plan on ever going back to doing it again. So I don't mind saying, like, the amount of work that I was getting paid to do, like, I didn't even come close to getting it done in a day, because I was literally like, yeah, hang on. No, yeah, no, I'll get back to you. Just a sec. Put them on hold. And I'm like, Coach, what's up? You know, and
Right.
So you do what you love, and then you don't mind doing it 14 hours a day. So
Right. It's not a bad thing when passion wins out over the day job, at least in my
100%.
my short experiences. So you guys both hit on something.
Basketball.
You both hit on something I wanted to nitpick at a little more. So you talked about how much just JUCO basketball you both watch. And I was trying to picture this before we set up this episode, because I feel like I watch as much college basketball games as I can, as much content that I can consume as physically possible. But there's so many resources for high major Division I basketball, right? Like, you've got all the major networks, you've got sites like The Athletic with dedicated coverage, team specific dedicated coverage. And now you've also got 300 plus athletes reaching out directly to you. How do you guys stay up to date on JUCO players across the country? Are there resources that make it easy for you, or how do you even find the coverage of these teams and these players?
You're kind of your own coverage. like
Yeah.
like you're the one making the coverage, right? So I mean, Todd, we've got Synergy logins. Synergy is a great partner of ours that keeps us up to date with all the best technology and all of the film literally from around the world. I mean, I'm watching. Yeah, it's constant, like anything, because we're watching high school stuff, we're watching AAU stuff, we're watching FIBA stuff, we're watching JUCO stuff, and then a lot of it too is like you have to watch the teams that you're trying to help kids go to, right? Like whether it's Division I, D2, NAI, or whatever, because everything is so fit specific. Like, you know, somebody that works for Yak over at UIC may not work for Gates over at Cleveland State. You know, those are two different styles of basketball, and you know, so you've got to be strong on the relationships too with those coaches. You know, that's something that I think that was a big like drawing point for Todd to get over here was really just kind of like building those relationships, because that's so over the top important on this side of the business, where those are everything. You know, there's not a Division I staff that we don't have some connection to, you know, at least to be able to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, some more than others. And then, you know, lots of D2s and the D3s and NAIs and the JUCOs and all that kind of stuff. It's a bit like spinning plates sometimes, where you're just trying to keep everything in the air all at once. But I mean, that's where Todd comes in. And, you know, one of the things that we, I guess, have really tried to do is when somebody wants to work for us, as we continue to grow the company and we're just pouring money into growth. You know, the biggest thing that we can offer, like, you know, when Todd said he wanted to work with us, I said, look, you know, we don't have a lot of money yet. Like, we're still figuring that out. And especially the way that we make money is different, right? You know, we're trying to avoid individual transactions as much as possible. And we're working through sponsorship kind of stuff and everything. And I said, but I can offer you our network. And, you know, that's a huge piece of it, because, you know, a lot of the guys that come and work for us, like Kyle Drennan was the first person that actually was kind of like an employee. And I said, you know, I don't have a way to pay you yet, but I can get you a job. And he said, cool, I'll come work for you for 9 months and then get me a job. And so then we got him the ops job at McNeese, and then helped him out with the head coach job at McCook. And now he's the ops at UIC. And, it's like, that's a lot of times, like it sucks because I want to pay these guys as much as possible. And we do what we can when we can until, things kind of, we get everything locked into place. But you can't buy the network, right? Like you can't just go out there and say, okay, well, I'm going to buy my way into coaching. Like,
right.
We've talked about it.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you got, Todd? But it's like, you gotta work. Like, I'll give you all the resources and the tools and everything under the sun. I mean, the spreadsheet that Todd works on with all of our contacts and stuff in there, I'll bet he could sell that to GAs for $10,000 a crack, because it's the cell phone number of every Division I college coach in basketball. Yeah. But it's what you do with it is what's important. And that's why Todd is such a superstar, and everybody that I talk to about him, the right job's going to come along where the right guy says, this is the guy that I need. Because Todd, like, I don't have to ask Todd's just always doing stuff, right? Like that's kind of, I think, the mark of somebody that's going to be great in this business is, like, you don't have to ask them. Like, they're just doing things, and they're like, oh yeah, I did this and I did that and it was great. And I'm like, oh, that is great. Thanks. Cause I can only, I got a million and 10 things I'm doing in a day, like staying on top of somebody and making sure that they're doing something that I asked. Like, I don't have time for that. So just, it's a different business for sure, but you can literally just take it and run with it if you want.
And I think, like, the main thing is, so, you guys have, Brandon, you have people that are players that are just DMing you and sending you this film and doing things. And just kind of speaking from my experience, I went to a kind of a major high school, at least back when I was playing in high school, 2011, Detroit Country Day, and right outside of Detroit, Michigan. Had some pretty high level, big time players, played on, the major EYBL circuits, McDonald's All-Americans, things like that. I just see it's, really easy for kids to really, kind of slide through the cracks. And then honestly, JUCO basketball, I think, kind of can get a bad rap at times. But, me being in the state of Michigan, I see teams like Schoolcraft College, and then you have, Mott Community College. I mean, you got some really good players that are going on to big schools here. So how do you kind of, nowadays the stigma on JUCO is definitely improved, but I remember a time where it was like, oh, you're going to play JUCO basketball? Why are you going to play JUCO? Why, if you're good enough, won't you just get there? So how do you kind of, maybe speak back to, how did you kind of break like that JUCO stigma?
We spend a ton of time telling stories, because it's, especially on social media. In 21, we're going to be telling a lot of stories with a lot of content. Docuseries stuff, mini docs, and more podcasts and interviews. Like I've got a podcast coming up next week with a junior college player. Like, we get NBA guys, we get Penny Hardaway, we get, kind of whoever we want on this podcast, but I want to tell this story from a player that was human trafficked, right? And, from a foreign country. And, it's this incredibly heartbreaking story, but at the same time, it's this incredible story of overcoming, right? And junior college, like with Solomon, and that's why I always say that Solomon was the perfect, like, first player for me to ever have a relationship with, because I got to see what junior college can do for people and what people can use to do for themselves through junior college. And so I spend a ton of time telling stories, tweeting out about successes, tweeting out about, just unique people and unique backgrounds and all that kind of stuff, to really show that, like, hey, junior college is not just about, like, who didn't make the grades, or, if they didn't make the grades, here's the things that they overcame, that they did, that they changed, that they whatever, to be, incredibly successful. Like, honestly, I know as many dumbasses from high school as I do from junior college. Like, in reality, right? It's junior college has this rap that, I guess back in the 90s and stuff, you kind of had, some of these dudes that went on to the NBA that were maybe a little rough on the edges. And, you know, that, okay. But I also know plenty of high school kids that, you know, just happened to be in a situation where they were able to either have the support around them or something to get the grades that they needed, to get the test scores that they needed and stuff like that. And were complete morons when they went on to college. Like, you know, not only in the classroom, but were, you know, insane outside the classroom. Like it's just to any of that stuff, to paint it with like one massive brush is crazy when you really dig into, you know, what is really there, and you know, why is somebody there, and you know, everybody's background is so different, and there's so many reasons that people wind up in the positions that they wind up in. And so yeah, we just tell stories so that people can kind of see like, hey, this is somebody that took an opportunity that they otherwise wouldn't have had were it not for junior college. I mean, I always tell Chris Parker, the president of the NJCAA, all the time, like junior college offers this opportunity that, I mean, think of all these great people and stories and stuff that we would just completely miss out on were it not for junior college. Right. So, which is why it frustrates the pieces out of me that the NCAA spends so little time, like actually giving a crap about what happens in the NJCAA or, you know, rules to kind of help blend those things together and make things easier rather than, you know, let's make things as difficult as possible.
Right.
The NCAA making things easier, that
not really their bag.
Why would they ever do anything like that?
Right.
Make sense.
So, and I'm constantly, you know, Chris, I'm hitting him up all the time too. I'm sure I just wear him out sometimes, where like I'll run into a rule where, you know, it doesn't make sense to me. Because it's restrictive to somebody or a situation or whatever for the sake of having a rule, right? And so I'm hitting him up and I'm like, Chris, the NJCAA is here to provide opportunity, not to restrict it and remove it from somebody, especially when it's a circumstance that's completely outside their control. And he's like, I know. We're working on it, you know? And so one of my main goals in 21 is I'm going to head back out. I've already gone to the NJCAA offices to go meet him the first time. And so I'm going to go back out there and start knocking on doors and say, let's have a sit down and talk about some of these rules that you have in place, shall we?
I love it. So on the flip side of what Carter just picked at, obviously the deck is stacked against these kids, really at all levels, from the top down of the NCAA down to where they're actually at. But on the flip side, I know this from experience with my high school team, every kid that made the varsity team that I work with, every single one of them thinks that they're destined to play college basketball at some level. And they think that if they put a 10-second highlight reel of jelly layup lines together, that they're the next big thing. And I can imagine out of the hundreds of submissions and reach outs that you're getting asking for help, there's a decent amount of those that are kids that might have hoop dreams that are a little unrealistic versus kids that you really think are deserving of help. So is there something specific you're looking for on film? Is it just the scouting eye in general?
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to, I'll put it this way, and Todd, correct me if I'm wrong. There's some film you watch and you just instantly know, like, okay, this is a player. This is, you know, whatever. That's easy. Anybody can do that. Where it gets tougher is when you're looking for something in that guy that he hasn't shown yet. Right. So, the easiest way to explain it is like when I go to Africa, like what level college basketball or what level of basketball you think I'm watching when I'm over there. Right. I mean, it's nothing. These are mostly kids that have never played organized basketball before. And so when we help those kids get over here, I mean, they've been successful, right? One of them's an NBA prospect. One of them's playing at BYU right now. You know, we've got kids that are in college right now signing Division I scholarships and stuff like that from these different camps. And none of them had ever really played truly organized basketball before. And so there for sure is, I don't know what you'd even call it, Todd, like an eye, I guess, to be able to see that there's something in that guy or girl that says, you know, I can't teach the things that you're really good at. I can teach you to play basketball. I can teach somebody to shoot a jump shot. I can't teach motor and toughness and, heart and, willingness to overcome and all that. And a lot of kids think they have that. And some of them do. And at the end of the day, yet they're still just not talented enough. Right. I mean, it is what it is. But there's a lot of kids that are also fooling themselves with, just how tough are you? Like, just how high does your motor run? Like, how bad do you really want this? And, at some point talent does matter, but you can overcome a lot more talented people by doing all the other things. And so I think we've done a really good job in the past of finding those kids that, maybe just didn't have the training and didn't have the coaching and the whatever, but they got something in them that says, screw it, I'll figure it out. Like Owen Nelson's a kid that's at Wyoming right now. And I like to talk about him because he comes from a developed country, right? He comes from Ireland, he comes from a first world country. So he didn't have that against him, but he hadn't played for very long. Like he was an Irish rules football player, right? Which is like a brutaler version of rugby. He's 6'10", 240 pounds. Like, he's a slobber knocker, but I know a ton of 6'10", 240 pound kids that can't find their butt with two hands on a basketball court. Right. And so Owen is playing meaningful minutes at Wyoming after 1 year of junior college, where that's kind of where he learned how to play basketball for the most part. Cause he played a little bit in the national team stuff where I first saw him in FIBA Division C. And, but he's doing it off of playing hard and like, just, practicing his ass off and being a kid that, whatever you tell him to do, like he's doing it. Now he might do it wrong, but he'll do it at 100 miles an hour. And, that goes a long ways, Now he's blessed with physical gifts that make him be able to just walk into the Mountain West and
also can't teach 6'10", 240. So
yeah, exactly. So I'm not, I understand what that is, but again, there's a lot of 6'10" kids that can't come close to playing in the Mountain West and have had the training and have had the coaching and have had, they've had a basketball in their hands since they were 5, as opposed to a hurling bat. And, it's like, so those are the kinds of things that I spend a ton of time looking for, is like, hey, let me watch you make a mistake and see how you react to it.
The whole nation of Ireland's probably just so pissed at you that you took their next hurling.
Right. Yeah. Their next hurling superstar is now in Laramie, Wyoming, dunking on people. So
I think a big part of it can be illustrated perfectly by, like kids need to put more plays like what Jalen Suggs did when he had the ball stolen from him, but then went back and blocked the shot in transition. I think Brandon really hit something on the nail there with understanding, like, how do you react when you make a mistake? Like, are you throwing your hands in the air, or are you getting back in it and getting right back to work and forgetting and being intentional and caring? I feel like that those are two things that can't be taught as well. And really hit it on the nail there. So
there's a kid, I'm going to call him out on this and he won't mind, I don't think, so when Drennan, who worked for us, got the head coaching job at McCook, a Division I coach had asked for some help with this kid. And so he goes over to Drennan, and his name's Trey Gomilian, and he's at Utah Valley now. He's a really good player. But I went to one of their first games against Garden City, and they got boat raced. Like, they were getting their butts handed to them. And Drennan finally had enough. Trey wasn't doing whatever he was supposed to be doing. And he comes out, and coach goes to just dab him up a little bit. And Trey just, get off me, goes down the end of the bench, and he's pissed. And so Drennan doesn't put him back in the game the rest of the time. And I'm walking around the gym afterwards, and I hear somebody talking to Trey, and I kind of peek around the corner, and there's his dad talking to him. And so I said, hey, I don't mean to interrupt, Mr. Darthard, but my name's Brandon. They're like, oh, okay. They'd never met me before. I helped her get to school. We never met. And I said, you mind if I talk to Trey for a second? And he says, no. He's standing there. Trey's got his head down and he thinks I'm going to give him the like motivational, like, come on, buddy, you can do it speech. And I annihilated that kid, like right there in front of his father. I was like, you son of a blah. And I went bonkers on this dude. I mother effed him like the coach that I used to work for. And he just like, oh my God. I turned this kid inside out and wore him in the hat. And the dad is like, I don't think he knew what to say. Right. He's like, oh, geez, I didn't know that was coming. And so, you know, we finished that up and I said, you understand like why I'm so angry at you right now. I was like, you're talented, you're this, you're that, whatever. And like your attitude is what's going to prevent you from ever playing college basketball again. And he is talented. But the thing that changed and, you know, I'm not saying it was because of the one butt ripping that he got, you know, Drennan is a heck of a coach, but he changed his attitude about everything. Like he literally was going to go from maybe not playing at McCook the next year, maybe playing someplace else, and then probably never playing college basketball again, to next year he's probably, you know, got a shot at being an all-league guy in the WAC. And it was about just kind of how he committed to his craft, you know, not only just in games, but also his attitude and like his motor and his leadership and things like that said, you know, this was a kid that nobody wanted out of high school. The reason that coach called me was for a favor. It wasn't because they were interested in recruiting him. You know, he went to Hargrave and it was like, nobody wanted him. He went to, I know he went and worked out at like a Division I school back home or something. And they were like, nah, like he's just not a college basketball player at all. Like that was the extent of his college basketball recruiting. Right. And, you know, fortunately Drennan took a chance on him and he ended up being an all-league guy. He averaged like 17 a game or something.
Wow.
And, you know, now he's at Utah Valley playing for Madsen and they love him. So.
Sure.
Yeah, that's impressive. And, you know, kind of just speaking to what Todd said, I mean, that play with Jalen Suggs, him getting back on, you know, defense after having that turnover. And I think that's, when we talked about earlier, the downside of social media, you have things like services like Overtime and all these mixtapes and the music. And, you know, there's players with absolute crazy followings on social media. Kids are damn near celebrities, entourages. It's actually crazy. I'm not going to name who the player was, but, you know, went to go see one of the big time players that had the big following, the high ranking, and you go to the games and they're just coasting through. They might make a couple highlight plays, but, you know, they're not really like get back, things like that. And, you know, it's kind of social media, unfortunately, giving the kids kind of a little sense of entitlement and, you know, making the emphasis on making the kid fall, but, you know, maybe you should make the basket or something. Right. You know, it's just like, and this, you know, I love the highlights, but like sometimes I cannot stand watching Overtime videos. They just kill me sometimes because they just emphasize these things that there's no coaches that are looking at Overtime videos like, oh, no. That's just not what it is. And it's, you know, it's I think it just points to the point that Todd made, you know, it's things like that. That's a top 5 pick or whenever he comes out, it's going to be a lottery pick and he's doing things like that.
Yeah. And it's, you know, not to be the like, get off my lawn guy, but you know what, if Overtime or whatever, your highlight thing, like, okay, cool. You know, you're throwing down an East Bay and layup lines or whatever, like cool. Like that's neat. I can't do that. Yeah, hell, I'd jump so high, I'd get scared coming down. But and that's fine. But if you don't have the rest of it, I'm so not interested in you. It's crazy. Like I could not care less. You'll get some of those highlight tapes and they'll show them like doing some crazy stuff at the beginning, like not in a game, or if it is in a game, it's out in transition. Like, don't give me transition buckets. I don't care. Like when you're by yourself, like 1-on-0 transition buckets, like I don't care, you know, unless you're trying to show me that you've got like a 3.940 or something, you know, how fast he got down the floor. But other than that, I don't care.
I think I saw a tweet from the JUCO Advocate account last week. I better not see a free throw on your film.
Get this in there. You know, they go to the rim and they get fouled, and then like you're showing me the.
Oh, so you made both free throws go like, for you, man.
You know, I'm like, what are we doing? I said, your only time you get to show me a free throw is if you're 7'3", and I want to see that the like signals from your brain do get to the ends of your fingertips. to be able to
Exactly.
make a free throw like that. Because hey, if you're a big fella and you can shoot 70% from the free throw line, like now we got something. But
Right.
I mean, I'm not like 6'10", I'm 6'7", but the free throw line.
You've been 6'10" before that.
I mean, like you said, you got to add a couple. If you looked in the pregame media guide, I'm gonna get an extra inch or two. I was probably pushing 6'8" on there. I'm probably 6'5" in all reality, but you know the free throw line can sometimes be a scary place.
Yeah, it's a scary place. It's lonely out there, right?
It's
like
lonely.
Brock Erickson.
It's called a free throw, but it doesn't really feel free.
No, Brock Erickson from UIC and I are always arguing about the height thing. Like he wants to know, what is your height barefoot? And I'm like, Coach, who cares?
Be barefoot on
you
the
play in shoes. Like,
are we playing barefoot? I hope not.
He's like, I want to know true height. And I'm like, look, dude, if somebody starts giving you their barefoot height, they're just screwing themselves, because nobody asks for barefoot height, right? Like the NBA decided to start doing, true height measurements last year, I think it was. And like all of a sudden, somehow a few guys went up an inch. Like LeBron grew an inch when they actually measured him, and they're like, oh geez, he's bigger than we thought. But a lot of guys, shrunk 2 inches, and I'm like, who cares? Like, just pick the standard. Is it shoes or no shoes? We already use shoes. Just keep using shoes. Right. What are we doing?
Right. Crazy. All right. So I wanted to save a little time here to pivot to guys in college basketball today that are former JUCO players that are either just balling out or are guys you expect to emerge. I know Todd and I have had a couple live locker rooms in the past couple weeks where he's brought a ton of knowledge on guys to the table here. So I guess I'll just throw it to you guys first. Who are some names people that are listening to this should know that are former JUCO guys in the world of college hoops today?
We had one on we did a podcast episode with Chris Duarte, who's at Oregon. And, there's a lot of guys that are kind of bounce back, D1 JUCO, D1 again, and then that are being really successful and stuff. But Chris was a true JUCO guy, coming from the Dominican, and I'm always fascinated with him because his story is so cool. Like, and there's a lot that we didn't talk about in that podcast with his story. Just
plug the episode. Give people the episode, Brandon.
Yeah, the live period, just the live period. That's all you got to search. We got all kinds of cool stuff on there. But the Chris Duarte episode was about his journey and, a lot about him as a person and things. And again, like I said, there's some stuff that was left out of there because it's a little gnarly. The world of college basketball is not necessarily always a pretty place, but he's fantastic. He's 6'6", long. He can shoot it. He can handle it.
Guard
he can
skills,
play a little point. He's got guard skills. He can play the wing. He's got a high motor, all this kind of stuff. And, I think he's one of those kids. I know he's older. I know he's a little bit older, and all these NBA guys are like, 24, you might as well be dead. But it's like, he's not even 24 yet, but he's one of those guys that I think if somebody in the NBA locks into that kid and really, really puts time and energy into him, I mean, you've got a high impact NBA player, in Chris Duarte, because he's one of those kids that every single time he's bumped into something in his life, he's just like, plows right on through it.
Yeah. And I pulled up his numbers just while you brought up his name. 15, 5 and 3, 53% from the floor, 42% from three. I mean, that's pro numbers. Yep.
He's a pro player. I mean, he's at minimum a 3-and-D NBA guy, I think. That has a lot more upside to him.
Love it. Todd, what about you? I know you've dropped the Demoy Hodge name on us earlier this week.
Yeah, Demoy, he when I saw him, he was at JA 45 when I was there working with Brandon, and let's just say everyone was talking about him. He was very impressive at the event. And when he ended up going to Cleveland State, I was like, Cleveland State. Okay. I mean, I thought, I know Coach Gates was on. Coach Gates ended up with 3 guys from that event, right?
Yeah. Because he was at Florida State at the time when the event was happening in July. He didn't get the Cleveland State job till mid-August.
Yep.
And so
Crazy late.
he started calling all of the guys that he had seen when he was, there on Florida State's dime. And, he was, when he got that job, I mean, Des Moines was one of the first ones that he called.
And on top of that, another guy on that same team at Cleveland State, one of the best names in college basketball you'll ever find, Trey Gomilian.
Yeah.
He's another stud who also impressed at our event, and he's at Cleveland State playing great for Coach Gates. Another one of my favorites, he's at McNeese State, Sir Drew, the king of threes.
Drew Cuxhausen. Yep.
5'10", right?
Yeah, 5'10". I think they list him at
right?
6 foot, but we're doing the shoe thing. Yeah. I think he shot 49% from three last year as a Division I player. 137 makes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like he leads with makes this season too, right? So far.
So yeah, it's been crazy with those poor guys. That the hurricane wiped out Lake Charles, and so they literally scattered to the winds for the most of the fall. They were living at University of Louisiana, Lafayette.
Yes.
So crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite JUCO products to follow. And then of course, I'll plug a former Artichoke in there, and Fighting Artichoke is the mascot of Scottsdale Community College. I'm not sure if you guys knew that. Best mascot in the world.
Favorite mascot ever.
A Fighting Artichoke.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
He's a doozy.
The Fighting Artichokes.
I gotta see that logo and what their gear looks like. Do they actually have
I don't have any on.
an artichoke or something like that?
Yeah. I'll send it over to you.
All right. I gotta see that.
Xavier Fuller. He was an All-American for us last year. 6'5", 2. He can play the 2 or 3. Just does everything. He's at University of South Dakota, along with one of our other players, Boogie Anderson, as well, point guard, 6'4" point combo guard, and they've been killing it. Obviously, the wins haven't come yet, but in conference they should start to kill it, and I'm excited for them.
It's been interesting to look this year too at like this guy Sean on Twitter had hit me up, and we'd actually talked in the locker room stuff earlier, and he was like, every time I look at these box scores, like the first, second, leading scorer on, each team, and a lot of these mid-major, and down levels at least, they're all JUCO guys. I'm like, yeah, I know. And, people just kind of forget about it. The John Rothsteins of the world that go out there and, he's like, this is a junior college transfer. This is all strange and new to me. And I'm like, bro, there's literally 400 of them that sign Division I every year. Like you immediately put it out of your mind that, they went to, because he refuses to ever say like which school, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to
catch
college.
Yeah.
Chris Duarte played at a junior
dark entity.
Yeah. It played at a junior college. I don't know what that is. And it's like,
or they name their former, if they're a D1 guy first, they name their former D1 school, but they'll never bring up the JUCO school.
No. And that's the thing is, like, if you look at South Dakota's roster, they have Ty Chisholm as well. They have Mason Archambault as well. I think they have 5 total JUCO guys on that roster, and that's a third of their roster.
Yep.
Cleveland State obviously has 3, if not more.
Oh shoot, Cleveland State's got like 5, I think. But it's at all levels. Michael Mulder is making threes for the Golden State Warriors right now. He played at Vincennes.
Yes.
He's about to take my boy Jordan Poole's job.
Yeah.
I have beef with Michael Mulder right now. He's got to stop being so hot from the arc, man. We need Jordan Poole to keep a roster spot.
Like he just, Jay Scrub got drafted this year straight from junior college, right? It's every level. And I'm not saying that like, the highest high levels, like it is difficult because especially if you come in with, maybe only 2 years to play. This year is a little different, but that transition time is kind of funny. It does take a minute. Like it even took a guy like Chris Duarte the first semester to kind of figure out, what he was doing and stuff. But you get something different with some of these kids. Like they're not entitled, right? There's not a lot of JUCO guys that got a silver spoon, there's a lot of things that they can draw on to overcome a lot of stuff. I mean, you look at Gavin Kinsmill down at, Stephen F. Austin last year when they beat Duke, right? Like their top, I'm trying to remember, it was like 3 of their top 4 or 5 scorers in that game were all junior college kids, and yeah, like when you're up against Duke, and I'm not saying that Stephen F. Austin's going to go into Cameron Indoor and, win every game or anything like that. But like, once they got to the point where they're like, hey, we got a chance here. Like, you're not scaring those guys away.
No.
Yeah.
They're like, have you seen what I used to eat at Navarro Junior College? Like, the hot dogs that people are eating at Cameron Indoor here are nicer than anything I ever had at Navarro. And, then they go out there and they punch those guys in the mouth. And
you gotta love that. Just like watching guys that just work hard and had to earn everything. You can't, how do you hate a guy like a Chris Duarte, or like a guy or any JUCO guy who really had to just do what you had to do to, get it done.
The biggest programs are starting to recruit. Tyon Grant Foster's at Kansas. Sardar Calhoun's at Florida State.
I was just going to mention them.
It's
Teddy Allen, Big Ten guy, lighting up the Big Ten in Nebraska this year.
Teddy Allen.
Yep. Teddy Allen's it. And I will tell you, Teddy Allen's faults and history are no secret, right? Like all you got to go do is Google his name and you go, oh, geez. But Teddy Allen's doing fine. Teddy Allen has grown a lot and matured a lot and figured out a lot. And you know where he learned that? Junior college. Yeah. Right. Like playing it in Scottsbluff, Nebraska, at Western Nebraska for Corey Farringer. Like, you if you're not figuring it out there, you're never going to figure it out.
Well, and you have a choice too, right? For a kid that started at West Virginia to end up at a community college, you can go one of 2 ways. You can either put your head down and do the work and accept your circumstances and control your own outcome, or you can let it defeat you. And clearly, I mean, props to Teddy Allen, props to all the kids that are going through that end up making it back up to where they want to be.
100%.
Crazy impressive. All right, so I want to throw a quick hitter at you guys. We probably are going to clip this for like a short little promo of this episode, just a heads up going into this, but give me your Mount Rushmore of JUCO players of all time. That could mean anything to you. That could mean impact. That could mean overall ability.
Your personal favorite, if you got one. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's just your Rushmore.
I mean, you've got the names that everybody knows, right? Like you've got the Dennis Rodman and Jimmy Butler and Jay Crowder and
Larry Johnson.
Larry Johnson and all that. But my favorite is probably Birdman.
Chris Anderson.
Love him.
Birdman, Chris Anderson. Oh. Like this guy never stopped being JUCO, right? Like he still is. He went to Blinn for a year and then was like, yeah, I'm done with college. So I can't say that like Chris Anderson's like life choices or something that I'm probably, saying that I love, but I really got into basketball. When I was in college and stuff, like basketball wasn't a big deal to me. I'm just like, hey, I'm a fan, I'm whatever. And I just remembered always watching him play, and he played like his hair was on fire all the time. Like he knew he might only get 8 minutes, and he was going to give 150% for those 8 minutes.
His hair also often looked like it was on fire.
It also may have been on fire.
It really does.
Right. Like, I mean, that guy's got a crazy story. We're hoping to get him on the podcast soon, but it's such a, I don't know, like there's just something where you're like, man, you've got all of this stuff, you got all this baggage, you got all these personal problems, you got all this stuff. And when you stepped onto the court though, like he just hit that go button and it was like, all right, I'm coming for everybody's throat. I don't care who it is. And I don't know, there's just something about that where I'm like, we're not even talking about talent here, right? Like this is like, yes, to do what he had to do to play in the NBA as long as he did, of course he's talented, but it's not like, man, look at that sick whatever he's got. It's more like, holy crap, he just like did stuff really hard and you did it really fast and like jumped really high and swung his arms in the air. Like it was something like it was controlled chaos.
Yep.
And then when you look at him, it even made it more chaos. And I just loved it. And so he's, I don't know, that's my every time I think of like junior college and whatever, this Chris Anderson mohawk, rises up in my head.
It's a good avatar for it.
I'll throw one out there now to get the second person, Brandon. If we're gonna do 4, going along the same lines, as not to put out the obvious ones out there, Brian Scallobrini. Oh yeah, one that lesser known to be a JUCO product, played in a nice little conference up northwest called the NWAC. Yep. That was awesome. It was also on the live period. They already interviewed Sir Brian Scallobrini of the Boston Celtics.
White Mamba.
NBA champion.
Yeah, White Mamba, I was going to say. Greatest
NBA champion Brian Scallobrini. Shoreline, is that where he played?
Yeah.
Shoreline Community College.
Yep, for Joe Calero, former Cal Poly coach. So yeah, I mean, it's are we naming more, or are we just, is that kind of
we're doing 4, right?
Let's get 2 more.
I believe there's 4 people on Rushmore, so I need 2 more.
Okay. You know, no name for sure, but like kind of people I think forget that he was a JUCO guy, but like the franchise, like there's another guy that just came in and was like, I'm just gonna go do a bunch of stuff, and like, you know, was just go motor. Steve Francis, I mean, he was that dude was a baller, and yeah, he's one that kind of people forget about when you kind of dig into some of the bigger names, you know, because
I had no idea he was a JUCO guy. No
I was going to say, you just educated me. I did not. I mean,
yep.
That's funny because whenever you see Steve Francis, you see Maryland highlights. You never really, I mean, personally, I never heard about the JUCO part of it.
Went to Allegheny in Maryland, and before that, he finished at Allegheny. And then he was somewhere before that. I can't remember where it was. I want to say he was in Texas maybe, but I think he finished at Allegheny. And actually, so Francis and Sean Marion over back there somewhere went to Vincennes. They played in the national championship against each other, or not national, played at Hutch. I can't remember if it was the championship game or if it was whatever, but
a different tourney game.
That was before my time of paying attention to junior college. So,
all right, Todd, give us one more.
I'll cap it off with a current NBAer, and I'll just cap it off with Jimmy Buckets. Jimmy Butler, Tyler Junior College in Texas, obviously then Marquette afterwards. But talk about a guy who epitomizes what junior college player truly like is. A guy whose work ethic, who feels like he's given nothing, who's humble and just is going to work harder than everyone else because that's his only way not his only way, but that's the way he's going to distinguish himself from everyone else. And that's what junior college products do time and time again everywhere they go. And that's why if you're a mid-major coach, now high major, like Brandon said, Kansas, Florida State, Nebraska, junior college products more and more are getting recognized as guys who will take nothing for granted and work for everything that they earn. And so he embodies that. He really does, because he didn't have to be a star in the NBA. A lot of people probably thought that he was just going to be a nice player when he was drafted by the Bulls, but obviously he's made a way for himself and he's worked for everything that he's earned in the league. And that's why I'm really happy about his success as an NBA. And that's why if you're a mid-major coach, a high major coach, a low major coach, D2, D3, NAI, if you're not recruiting junior college products, you're not recruiting JUCO products, then
Todd,
you're missing out.
Todd, say it one more time, because the people need to know. I don't get it. We can give them the proof, we can give them the players, but they need to know that JUCO guys can get it done.
Two JUCO guys played in the NBA Finals last year for the Heat. This year, the Houston Rockets have 3 JUCO guys on their roster.
I don't know
what
more you need. Proof's in the pudding.
25% of their roster is junior college players.
It seriously, if you turn your nose up at junior college players at this point, it really doesn't make any sense. You're just shooting yourself in the foot. And I don't think there are many coaches who do that anymore. Right. But there definitely are still some. And they'll learn quick. They'll learn quick when the guys around them are starting to beat them with JUCO products. They'll learn quick. So
Yep.
either they get with it or they just keep getting. They'll probably get beat by JUCO guys in the future. So
Yes, sir.
100%.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention, so I'm a jersey connoisseur. I'm in a Marquette jersey. This is not a Jimmy Butler Marquette jersey. This is a Darius Johnson Odom
Ooh,
Marquette jersey, Hutchinson Community College project.
good
there
old
we go.
Hutch. Yeah.
I like it.
and also be remiss if I didn't shout out my top 3 JUCO players all the time. These are personal preference, but gotta shout out Ben Wallace because I'm a Pistons fan.
Of course.
Gotta shout out Big Ben. Doug Anderson from Michigan Kalamazoo Central, college dunk champion, one of the craziest, probably the craziest athlete I ever played against or seen live. And then I was actually a big fan of the Pierre Jackson kind of Ball His Life series, and his he kind of actually turned me on to I believe it was the College of Southern Idaho.
Yep, CSI.
Yep, CSI.
Yep. Yeah, some real good basketball there as well. So they had a couple guys go play D. So I started following them afterwards. So got to shout out those 3 guys. Hold a special place in my heart, JUCO guys.
I mean, you dig through like the list of guys. You go, oh geez, I didn't know about that guy. I didn't know about that guy. I didn't know about that guy. You know, that played junior college and all the way back from, you know, the 60s, right? Like there's I don't remember how many it was. 5. There might be 5 guys in the NBA Hall of Fame that were JUCO players. You know, which junior college has been a different thing, right? For over the last 70 years of basketball, it's evolved and changed and, you know, whatever. But the point being, it has always been something where it's like, hey, you weren't the 5-star, like, you know, you were going to make it no matter what, because you just had everything and, you know, whatever. Like I think really the funny thing is when you look at the numbers of like how many guys are really being successful in Division I basketball, let's say, that were former junior college players in comparison to, you know, the guys that are high school players, the percentages are off, right? Like there's a greater number of players in junior college or in Division I basketball that were junior college guys than there should be based on the number of junior college players there are versus high school players. Mm-hmm. It's just, you know, they're successful. I mean,
I mean, on top of that, like there's a lot of guys coming out of high school that should have been, like, due to their rankings, right? I mean, if you go off high school rankings, which we never will, but if you look at all that, there's more JUCO guys that are turning out and producing and doing well at the Division I level than probably high school guys.
Yeah, I'd bet on that number, that 5 number of NBA Hall of Famers. I think that's going to be on the rise here shortly in the coming years.
Yep.
For the long-term future.
Yep. 100%.
And one last thing I want to hit on. So you guys have a project called Project Rise that you, I believe, started in the middle of 2020. From what I've read about it, it sounds like an incredible initiative. So I'd love to hear from you guys what that is. Yeah,
we're a little COVID delayed on it, but we finally kind of have gotten rolling here. So the idea being that we want to directly impact the number of Black coaches coaching at the Division I level. So I'm always kind of like a kick in the door and just do stuff guy. So like I don't like asking. I just go do stuff. And so I said, okay, well, you know, we got to get this number up. I mean, it's ridiculous when you go back. The NCAA does studies on it, right? Like they commission and pay for studies and then they don't do shit about it. I'm like, all right. So we wanted to use our network and use the things at our disposal that can help the most. And so we've got 10 candidates that are coaches that we know or were nominated or, you know, we met through this process or whatever that we think should be coaching in Division I basketball, whether it's in a support or an assistant role as early as next year. And so we're going to pair each of those guys up with a Division I head coach as a mentor. And then, you know, we've been fortunate to get guys like Buzz Williams, who's agreed to do it, Quanzo Martin, you know, guys like that have said, yeah, absolutely. You know, we'll jump on and help with this. And so they'll be paired up with a candidate and they will mentor them over the next, you know, 3-4 months until kind of the job cycle comes around here. And then we'll also be doing a lot of group session stuff where we've got Adam Gerlach, who used to be an assistant at Cornell, who's now does things like emotional intelligence training and different things like that. They're going to be doing some of that stuff in groups. They're going to be meeting with guys like, Maura Morgan's probably going to come on from South Alabama, and he's going to talk about riding scout, right? And like what those expectations are at the college level versus, maybe what they do in the junior college or high school ranks where they're at now. And just a lot of that stuff every month to kind of give them as many of the tools as possible that we can. But also a lot of it is that networking, like true meaningful networking. Because, there's a lot of like networking things that people go to and they're like, oh, hello. And, even if it's in person, back when we could do things in person, right? Like in the time before time. And it, but it doesn't accomplish anything. So this is really very much like a, just kick in the door, like, all right, your mentor is Buzz Williams. Buzz is going to tell you stuff and you should shut up and listen. And you should really build as strong of a relationship with him as you can, because when job time comes around, let me tell you, it's going to help if Buzz picks up the phone for you. Mm-hmm. And so the hope is to inject 10 new Black coaches into Division I basketball next year, and then do it again and do it again and do it again.
That's really awesome. I mean, and like you said, and if people want to actually look at the numbers it's actually staggering. The numbers of, the number of African-American coaches, and, even me personally being African-American, I know kind of it's not something we're going to dive into, but it's out there. And, I have friends that are in coaching as well. And sometimes it feels like they can even get to a point where they feel like they discourage and they get down on themselves. And it's just, that's an awesome kind of project. And I recently was reading up on, so I'm really excited to see that moving forward, and, really appreciate you guys doing something like that as well. It's much needed and admirable. It's
one of those things where this business has given me personally so much, right? Like just in the way that I get to get up every day and do what I love to do. And at the end of the day, the reason I get to do what I do is because of a ton of African-American athletes and African-American coaches. Like, if I'm not willing to take all the resources that I have, if we're not willing to put essentially our money where our mouth is when we talk about these different things, like, what are we doing? Like, I have the ability to do this stuff. Like, I hope people get jobs all the time. And if I'm not willing to do that, then, I'm just taking, I'm not giving. So, that was, not to put it on this, other pedestal of thought. It's really like, no, that's really dumb. Like, if you just take all this and you just don't give anything back, like, that's stupid. Like, why would you go through life like that? So. Right.
Well, I think the world would be a much better place if more people shared that mentality. And I think in general, guys, with all the JUCO players you've talked about needing, humility, needing a work ethic, needing to be grinders, you guys certainly embody both of those characteristics. So I applaud what you guys are doing. Thank you for coming on the show with us. This was an awesome episode. We'll get this out hopefully later this week. And anybody that listens to this, if you need to follow JUCO Advocate, you can find them on Twitter at JUCO Advocate. You can follow Todd at Coach Todd Z. And then, plug everywhere else that they should find you guys digitally, please, before we wrap.
Yeah, we've got Verbal Commits at Verbal Commits, the live period, wherever you get your podcasts, check that out. We've done, I don't know, what are we up to? About 30 episodes now. And because it's COVID, what else are we going to do? Like, let's go start a podcast. That was kind of what we did there. But yeah, we've got a lot of cool stuff coming down the pike here in the next couple months. So stay tuned.
Love it. Well, thank you so much, Brandon. Thank you, Todd. We appreciate you guys. And we look forward to seeing everything you guys bring into 2021.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.